Is everybody, check your neighbors, is everybody back from the restroom? We're good? Okay. Everybody's on 7C, brain science. This is our last day looking at the brain science, like really looking at the different parts of the brain. So let me grab my little fake brain over here. Who can remind me where Phineas Gage had his injury? Yes, Carlos. His frontal lobe, right? When the rod went through his brain, it went through the left cheek, up through the top of the head, and it affected his frontal lobe. Raise your hand. What does the frontal lobe control? Yes, ma'am. How patient. Also, something else. Remember the rocks. What else did it control? Somebody else. Decision making and reasoning. Very good. What do we kind of agree that Phineas Gage was a different person after the accident? Dulce, do you agree that Phineas was different after the accident? Okay. I'm going to tell you, Mrs. Barr is making a slight alteration today. We're supposed to make a debate that Phineas was 100% unchanged. I don't think the way that we've been talking about it, talking about how does a setting cause conflict, how does a lack of knowledge of the brain lead to a lack of medical treatment, and how can one event have a chain reaction to multiple events. We've been talking about how he's changed over and over. I don't think any of us can argue that he was the same person after the accident. Can anybody in here argue that? If you can, let me know. So we're going to modify it slightly today when we go to our argument. So you'll have to stay with me to kind of make a change. We're going to say half of the room is going to argue that after the accident, Phineas Gage was physically recovered. Okay? Can we argue that he was physically pretty much recovered? It's not like the rod took off half of his face. Yes, he had a weird eye, but other than that, pretty much physically recovered. You guys are going to be my physically recovered side of the room, okay? Okay, that's the evidence that you're going to look for today. Does everybody understand that Phineas Gage was physically recovered? This side of the room, you're going to argue he was not mentally recovered. That's a pretty easy argument, right? I think we can find that. Now, they have harder evidence to find. You guys have easier evidence, but I'm introducing a new term to you guys today. Most of you from 6th grade will remember a counter argument. Can anybody raise their hand and tell me what a counter argument is when you have an argumentative paper? Counter argument. Even look at the word counter means other side, argument. So Leona? Yeah, so a good lawyer can argue their case, but they always will acknowledge there's another side of the argument, right? How many of you, when you go up to your mom or your dad and you ask for something, you're ready with your counter argument? You know they're going to go, oh, wow. They're going to come at you with something. How many of you are always ready for it because you want to get what you want? Yeah, that's called a rebuttal. Okay, I'm going to take my shoe off because earlier it flew across the room. So the way I always taught my students rebuttal is that, because you're going to see why. She's like looking like, why is your shoe flying? You'll understand. Rebuttal. You take the counter argument and you're going to kick it in the bottom. Okay? It's a big but in this sense. I understand you disagree with me, but you're wrong because that's what a rebuttal is. So you guys are going to have to argue a rebuttal. Yours is pretty easy. You're going to say, hey, I understand. So my counter argument to him being physical recovery, what's still wrong with him? No, not about mental. Physically, what's still wrong with him? His eye. What's missing? His brain's not missing. His part of his skull is missing. Okay. All right. So I could argue he's not physically fully recovered. He's missing part of his skull and he's gone blind. So you're going to have to come up for a rebuttal to kind of prove me wrong. Go, yeah, but tell me what was he able to do for 12 years afterwards. You're going to have to prove that he still was very capable of things. Likewise, this group over here. You're trying to convince me he was completely mentally changed, right? Here's my counter argument to you. For 12 years, he held down a job. If he was completely that mentally changed, he couldn't have held down a job. So you're going to have to come up with a rebuttal to prove me wrong. go back possibly to yesterday's lesson about his jobs and how long he kept his jobs. That's the only hint I'd give you about that, okay? All right. So are we ready to begin our unit? We're going to go to lesson 9. Lesson 9. All right, lesson 9. The way we act human. We're going to skip 1. We're going to go back to it tomorrow for vocab. But for time's sake today, let's go on bubble 2. Bubble 2, okay? We're going to, it's again following Phineas Gage. We're going to explore how Phineas really had a hand in how we understand the brain, okay? We've talked about this. Do any of you guys remember the difference between whole brainers and I believe it was individualists, like the individual parts of the brain, what they believed? You guys remember, what did they whole brainers believe about the brain?
That it's one being, not like different parts of the brain.
So the whole brain does everything, right? Whole brainers believe like the rod through the brain
Ended everything.
Okay, is that true? No. We learned that there's how many parts of the brain? A lot, right? There's a lot of parts of the brain that control different aspects. So we're going to figure out how they found that out today. That's what we're going to find out. So let's follow along. When we press play, I'm going to pause us at certain points to answer, okay? We good? All right. Following Phineas Gage.
Half the world away from San Francisco in 1862, French surgeon Paul Broca in Paris announces a discovery that finally turns brain theory into brain science. Dr. Broca shows how damage to one very small spot in the brain causes one very specific kind of damage. Broca is still unable to study a living brain, but he has been performing autopsies on the brains of stroke victims.
Autopsies. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that word autopsies before. Okay, Bobby, what is an autopsy?
When they like look at your body for stuff, or like after you die.
It's cadavers. So if you didn't know this, in medical school, if you want to become a doctor, you will be given a cadaver. A cadaver is a really nice way of saying a dead body. And that's where they'll practice. They'll actually cut open the body, and that's where they learn where arteries are and muscles. But one part that really fascinated people was the brain. So they would take, I know it sounds gross, but they would take people's brains out. And this particular doctor, Broca, took out their brains to study the effects of a stroke. Let's take a hypothesis. What do you think they saw from stroke victims? Do you think there's any signs?
They saw like the damage.
There might be damage in a particular area.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if that hypothesis is right. Let's see.
A stroke is an interruption of the blood supply to the brain that causes localized damage and often leaves stroke patients without the ability to speak.
Okay.
Broca noticed
were right.
in the brains of stroke patients who'd lost the power to speak, there is visible damage in a small area on the outside of the left frontal lobe.
Okay, so she was right. There is a part, when he went in and he knew the person had had a stroke and that they were unable to speak or had difficulty speaking, he used those patients and then did an autopsy to look at their brain to find out, like, why was their speech interrupted by this stroke? And over and over again on multiple stroke victims that showed this inability to either speak correctly or to speak at all, he found damage to the brain in the same place. And that place became known as the Broca. So let's scroll underneath the photo till it comes, the spot becomes famous.
The spot becomes famous as Broca's area. To find it, put your hand on the top of your left ear,
Let's do it.
directly above your ear hole. Move your fingers about 2 inches forward. Underneath the skull is your Broca's area.
Okay, right here. This is our Broca's area right here on our left side. It's really, really important. It's going to control something.
If it's damaged, you will lose the ability to speak. In medical language, you will have aphasia.
Okay, aphasia. Really fancy word. It just means after a stroke victim, some stroke victims cannot speak, but some of them, so frustrating for them, I can't even imagine. They're able to speak, but what they're thinking, they're saying is not what's coming out.
So I might be like, Isabella, I want a peanut butter jelly sandwich, but it's coming out, the dog sat underneath the cat, or something silly like that. And you're like, what are you talking about? So they seem very disconnected or like confused, and that's often a sign of a stroke and how people realize it. How many of you watch SpongeBob?
Raise your hand. SpongeBob. Yeah, SpongeBob. Who knows Doodle Bob?
Doodle Bob, right? He gets so frustrated because he's talking, nobody understands what Doodle Bob is saying. That's kind of like the stroke that's what happens with aphasia. Is he's saying something but nobody can understand it. Now, I mean, it's not funny, that's a comic, but to kind of give you an idea. Now there's another part right next to the Broca. Oops. Named Carl Wernick. Okay, so this whole nother part of our brain has the ability to understand speech. So if Bella tells me, Miss Borba, I need to use a restroom, I understand that and I say, go ahead and use the restroom. But when you have receptive aphasia, I might be, okay, another comic. Who knows Charlie Brown? How do the adults speak in Charlie Brown? Right? Okay, so it's kind of, that's what you hear. You don't understand it. And you're like, why are you talking like that? And you tell me I'm not talking like that. What are you talking about? And I still hear something that isn't clear, doesn't make sense. It sounds like you're saying really weird things to me. Again, very scary. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be if you had either of those two things go wrong with your brain? It's just misfiring, right? Okay.
Imagine that these two skills would be controlled from two different places in the brain. Broca's and Wernick's areas are the first anatomical proof of localization.
Localization, important word.
Other brain researchers soon learned to use low voltage electricity to stimulate specific points on the brain. Bit by bit, the map of the brain grows more detailed and more localized. Scientific map of the brain.
I'm going to freeze it really quick. I'm going to allow you guys. Sorry. I'm going to allow you to answer the questions on the side. Let's go. Let's look. What is aphasia or Broca's spot control? Remember, what is your ability to do what? Okay. And then likewise, Wernick's, what is his spot control? Okay. So turn to a neighbor, check to see if you have the same answer. Instead of yelling it out, I want to see if you all have the same answer. Turn to a neighbor. Give me a thumbs up if you guys have the same answer. You're all brilliant. Okay, wonderful. Scroll down. We have a written part. Erin, read me what it says. Okay, perfect. The part I have highlighted right here in green. You should have highlighted it in green too. The answer is going to follow directly after that. Remember, Levi did a great job at the beginning. He told me what was the first belief about the brain, that the brain was a whole, the whole brainers. Remember, the whole brainers. Good job, Carlos. Whole brainers. But now we realize, look at that purple word. So write me your explanation. I'm going to give you a starter sentence for those that need it. If you do not need it, do not use it. But my friends that need a starter sentence, there you go. Before this discovery, doctors and researchers thought. Tell me what they thought and then what they learned. Okay? Complete sentences, capitalization, and punctuation, friends. Only use that starter sentence if you need it. If you're one of my friends that does not need it, you do not need to copy it. Turn and talk to your neighbor. Discuss it. Speak it out so you can write it out. What did they used to think about the whole brain? And now what did we learn about? I'm going to show you our picture. What did we learn about the brain, about sections? What did the sections do? Talk, work it out verbally, and then write it. Work it. Bennett, put your head up. You got this, baby. Work it out verbally, and then
Speak to begin with.
okay, good. So it's precisions versus whole brain, right? Like local, there's different areas versus the whole brain controlling everything, right? Yeah. Excellent. You have it in writing? Check what you wrote. Check what you wrote. Bennett, read to me what you wrote, baby.
I'm still typing.
You're still typing. Okay. So, but okay. Now talk it out then. No, look up. Tell me, what did they used to believe about the brain? It controlled. No, that it wasn't in sections, that it just all controlled everything, right? So one injury, whole brain's gone. Is that true? No, it's in what? You just write that. There you go. While you're finishing your typing, I'm going to just finish this last little section here. Sorry, things not following me.
Technology falls into disgrace, even though the phrenologists were right about localization. The whole brainers are also shaken. If speech is localized on these two spots, how could someone with massive frontal lobe injuries, Phineas Gage, for example, speak? And yet, Dr. Harlow had said that Phineas had fully recovered. Of course, few doctors in Boston remember much about the Gage case, and even Dr. Harlow has lost track of Phineas.
Okay, we're all good? Thumbs up? Okay, press tab 2. Tab 2, bubble 2. We're on tab 2. I'm sorry, bubble 2. Wrong terminology. We're going to find out a little bit more. Here's the thing. When Phineas had his accident through the frontal lobe, which we learn controls our personality, it's not that just his personality changed. It's that his social behaviors changed. It is actually nowadays, okay, new term that we've all have heard, this is actually where they study autism in this part of the brain. So when he had the brain injury, it took away some of his abilities to understand social cues. Okay, so have you ever been around somebody who is too much of a close talker? Okay. Have you ever been around somebody that doesn't understand tone? Because most of you understand when a voice gets high that somebody might not be happy, right? And when they have a voice like this, they're totally in a good mood.
Yes, I am in a good mood.
Right? But he lost that ability, that social cue, the social ability to understand different cues. We can read people's faces. There's nonverbal cues. And then there's tone cues, the way we say things,
the way we hold ourselves.
right? You know, the teacher gets that mean look when they're upset and you're doing something with Carlos is right. So we have that ability. You guys have those social cues to get it. That's what he kind of lost. That's what this section is going to be on. So let's pay attention to what he lost in this brain injury.
Massachusetts. At last, Dr. Harlow is at liberty to tell the full story of Phineas Gage's recovery 20 years before. He appears before the Massachusetts Medical Society in 1868 and spills the beans. This case has been cited as one of complete recovery without any impairment to the intellect, he says. But in truth, Phineas's personality changed drastically after the accident.
Okay, there's proof that he changed.
Though untrained in the schools, he possessed a well-balanced mind and was looked upon by those who knew him as a shrewd, smart businessman, very energetic, and persistent in executing all his plans of operation. In this regard, his mind was radically changed.
This side of the room, there's some evidence for you.
That his friends and acquaintances said he was
No longer Gage.
Phineas went from being the most efficient and capable foreman on the railroad to a man who couldn't be trusted because he couldn't get along with anyone. The new Phineas was pig-headed and stubborn one moment and wishy-washy and vague the next.
Okay, pig-headed. Raise your hand. What does it mean if you're pig-headed? Raise your hand, Levi. Yes, Carlos? Rude. Pig-headed. When you're pig-headed, you're like ornery. You're like stubborn, okay? So you want it your way. What is it? Well, there's a fun word. In my first period liked it. Wishy-washy. Does anybody know what it means to be wishy-washy? It's not a term we use a lot nowadays. All right. How many of you, when somebody asks, what do you want for dinner? You go, I don't care, whatever you want to have. How many of you do that? Okay, you're wishy-washy. That's what wishy-washy is. You're undecisive. You can't make a good decision. What does it mean, vague? That's an interesting French word there.
You don't give as much information.
You're not detailed enough. Yes. Very good, Levi. Next time, raise your hand, babe. Oh, you're good. All right. So we now see that he's kind of all over the place. One minute he's being super stubborn and the next minute he's like, I don't care, whatever you want. Does that make for a good boss? No. Does that make a good leader? Why? Okay, wait, raise your hand and tell me. Yes, yes. And then I'm going to go to Haley.
Because you need to set strict rules and have an ongoing, normal personality.
Okay, what is that word? It begins with a C.
Canoe? No, not canoe.
Come on, think about it. If I let you get away with something yesterday and then all of a sudden today I yell at you, I'm not being Thank you. So a good leader has to be consistent. It has to be very clear what I expect from you, and we follow those rules. You want to add, or did I take it from you? I'm sorry, Haley. I'm going to get you for the next one. Okay, here we go.
I think you have been shown that the subsequent
History and progress of the case.
warned us in saying that physically the recovery was quite complete, says Dr. Harlow. Mentally, the recovery certainly was only partial. The new Phineas could walk, drive a team of horses, and sail away to Chile, but he had lost a vital skill. He no longer knew how to be social.
Okay, there is evidence for both sides. There's evidence that he changed mentally. He was no longer knew how to be. Make sure you have that highlighted. This side. Above that, physically the recovery was what? Was quite complete. Make sure that's highlighted. That's your, remember, we're looking for our evidence. Make sure you have it highlighted. Okay.
Being social is a hard skill to measure. Social behavior goes beyond the ability to activate the correct muscles or decode the right spoken sounds. It's different from having manners. Manners are learned, and they differ greatly from culture to culture. Your parents teach you the right way to eat or to greet strangers, but other parents in other countries teach their children other right ways. Forks or chopsticks or fingers, there's no right way to put food in your mouth. Yet all humans swallow the same way. Swallowing is automatic behavior. Using a fork is learned behavior. Eating politely in the company of others is social behavior. In your brain, Broca's area may let you speak, and Wernicke's area may let you understand, but listening is also a complicated social behavior. Whether you realize it or not, you've been taught how to listen, how to make or break eye contact, how to murmur agreement or quiet objection, how to smile at the right moment or not to smile at all if the subject is grave. You also know how to show or hide your emotional reactions. You can laugh or yawn, roll your eyes upward in boredom, or open your eyes wide in delight. All of these behaviors can mean something entirely different in another culture, but all cultures have listening behavior.
So since you guys started preschool, kindergarten, you've been taught how to listen. How many of you have ever been told, look at me when I talk to you? Right? Okay. How many of you have ever been told, put your listening ears on? How many of you have ever been told, stop fidgeting, look up, pay attention? Right? You've been taught since a young age. We know it's not, when your mom's yelling at you, while you might think it's funny, is it wise to laugh at her? No, it is not. We know that that is not the right time to laugh because that's socially not acceptable. If you were told somebody just passed away, is it okay to smile and laugh? Socially, that's not acceptable, right? Those are social cues, but because you've been taught that. You've been taught that you behave a certain way. So we turn with your partner real quick. You're going to answer the question 3 on the side. What sorts of things do we do to show that we are an active listener, to that socially acceptable that we are listening? Okay, let's go. Turn and chat. You may it's highlighted, but turn and chat. I do not want copy and paste. I want you to write answers. Don't give me that look. No copying and pasting. Look at what's highlighted and break it down. What do we do? If your teacher's boring you, what might you do? Right? That's part of listening. Go ahead and put it. Think about if you're getting aggravated. Right, Isabella, right?
Get aggravated, huh? What do? We roll our eyeballs. We fold our arms. We might have a head tilt.
We might sigh, yes. that it? We're going to just do number 3. All right, good job. All right, good. No, we'll add more than one. Come on, think about it. So when you're aggravated,
I don't do that. I just ball my fist up.
you ball your fist. So write that.
But we do certain things when we're listening and something irritates us. What do you guys do
When you're really nervous. Oh, some of you guys come up to me, you're biting your nails
because you forgot your homework? So think about those things that you do that show that conversation, that listening, and how we communicate. Eye contact. A lot of you, I know I'm on fire on a lesson when your eyes get bright and you guys nod your head. I know I lost you when you're starting to nod off or you're like this. Or you give each other that side eye. Like that. Teachers, we have to read your faces all the time to know if you understand the lesson or not. Because when I get this, I know I need to slow down because I went way over your head. I'm like, okay, let's break this down. When I get this, I'm like, okay, I'm on a roll, right? We all get that. It's called social cues. Write it down. Make sure you have at least 5. Check. Count your quickly.
Okay, I got 5.
3 seconds.
You got this. And done.
Fingers up, eyes up. Fingers off the ball. Fingers up, eyes up. Okay. So remember, what is this picture of? The tampering iron that went through Phineas's head. That's the actual tampering iron. Is that his actual head?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
What did we read yesterday? You weren't here. What did we read yesterday? Who gave permission?
His mother allowed them to take his skull.
Dig up his grave 6 years after his death and take his skull. But while it's gross, it taught us about the brain. Okay, so here's an up close. Here's the up close of Phineas. Oh, yeah. Oh. Well, why?
So yes,
Carlos made a really good inference because look, you can see behind his eye. Do you notice that over here there's a bone there? There's nothing there. It took out that part of bone. Would that make sense to why he went what? Blind in that eye. Absolutely. Why does he still have a hole? What didn't they have in 1800s? They didn't have metal plates. They couldn't screw his skull back, okay? So he had that hole forever. What do you mean bend? It's just because that's the way it healed. Because remember, they didn't. Because they didn't have surgery to be able to. They kind of just remember. It was almost like puzzle pieces. It kind of thought they put it in the right spot and just let it heal. And they used his beanie to keep it in place. Yeah, it wasn't the best medical care. We talked about that. All right. Okay. Sit down. Scroll down. Go to where it says to act human. Scroll to where it says to act human. All right, here we go. We're continuing.
To act human, you mix emotions, actions, routines, customs, manners, words, and expressions in a predictable way. That's what Phineas seems to have lost. Bossing a railroad construction game requires more than a loud voice.
Make sure you're highlighting what needs to be highlighted.
Able to read the social behavior of the foreman. They have to know if he's angry or just joking, if his orders are reasonable, or if his judgment can be trusted. He has to be able to read the social behavior of his men, to know who are the reliable ones and who are the troublemakers. By all reports, the old Phineas was an excellent foreman. The new Phineas was not. All these changes were brought on by a hole through a specific part of his brain.
Okay, so based on this reading, explain why Phineas could still speak and listen, but he couldn't interact with the workers like he used to. What did he lose? His ability to what? To socialize, to be social. Put it into your own words. Tell me
what he lost.
a source. And then explain your evidence. Whew. How does your evidence show he's no longer social? If you get stuck on a stem, they're up here. So find me evidence he wasn't right. It's right there. You got some right there. Give me it and then tell me what that shows us about him socially. Like, how was he socially impaired? How was he socially impaired, folks? Explain it. Use evidence to prove it. Elaboration to explain it. Okay. You need capitalizations. Go back and edit. Look for capitalizations and punctuation. We know our sentence norms. Come on. Always, always, always. Phineas Gage better be capitalized. He is a proper noun. We know that. Phineas is capitalized. You don't have to put the Gage part, but his name better be capitalized. Do you think if you're going to...
Double thumbs up.
Double thumbs up? I love it. Okay. Let's turn it in. Let's go to our last little piece here. Let's go to 3. Debate. Ooh, we're going to start a debate. So, looking at this side of the room, remember I changed the prompt slightly because I'm the teacher and I get to do that for this. So, this side of the room, please click on A. You're approving that he was physically healed. Physically, not mentally, but physically recovered. Click on A. This side of the room,
B. Click on B.
you are going to prove that he is mentally not recovered.
Recovered.
So, I'm going to play the passage. I'm not reading it. I'm not discussing it. If you are a physically recovered, please highlight your evidence in yellow.
If you are
Mentally not recovered, red. Okay? Find your evidence. But we're going to go other places. We're going to, ooh, of course that happened to me. So, guess what happened? It always does this. Let's see if I can get back to it. And it's not going to let me. Ooh, maybe. Please. High touch, I don't know. It just does that sometimes. Okay. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
10 weeks after the accident, Dr. Harlow declares Phineas fully recovered from his wounds. He puts Phineas in a closed carriage and sends him home to his mother in New Hampshire. Phineas is very weak, but he can walk short distances. He can count, feed, and dress himself, and sing. He can speak clearly and make sense of what he hears.
Okay, that was my physical. Here's mental.
About the recovered Phineas. Just before he leaves Cavendish, Dr. Harlow gives Phineas a little test. The doctor offers Phineas $1,000 for the pocketful of pebbles that Phineas has collected walking along the Black River near town. Dr. Harlow knows that Phineas can add and subtract, yet Phineas angrily. Dr. Harlow tells himself that a man who is so badly hurt is going to need time to regain his full powers.
Okay. Leaving your, make sure you have it highlighted, leaving your Chromebooks open. I need you to open your Phineas Gage workbook to page 39. Okay, so we're going to work on our social cues, listening ears on, because we're going to make a quick alteration. Okay, you ready? Yes, you don't have one? Let me grab one from over here. Has a brain on it. Thank you. There you go. Put your name on it. Thank you. I forgot you were gone yesterday. So, we're on page 39. Look, eyes up. Oh, wait. Andy, eyes up. Okay, page 39. This side of the room. Okay. At the top, it says Phineas is not the same person. It says Phineas is the same person. Cross that out and write physically recovered there. Cross out the title and write physically recovered. For reason, I gave you a starter sentence. Phineas is physically recovered. Give me your reasoning in your own words why we would say he is physically recovered. Underneath where it says evidence, you need to find 2 pieces of evidence that prove he's physically recovered. Do we understand? Give me a thumbs up if we understand me on this side of the room. We good? Bennett, you good? Okay. Let's talk about this side of the room. Eyes on me. You guys are on this column right here. Cross out at the top where it says Phineas is not the same person. Cross that out and instead put mentally altered instead. It's basically the same thing. I just changed the wording. Okay? mentally altered. In just one moment, yes, but thank you for asking. I gave you a starter sentence. Phineas is not mentally recovered because, tell me why in your own words, from what we've read, why he's not mentally recovered, and then give me at least 2 pieces of evidence down where it says evidence. Do we understand? Okay, I have one more thing to add because I love to always make you look. You get to use evidence from this lesson, but there's another lesson you should look at. Subunit 1, Lesson 4, Tab 2. That's the one where there's something strange about Phineas when he was walking barefoot and wanted to walk 20 miles home. And then they talked about his injuries, how his injuries healed. So that one will also give you additional evidence that might be a little bit stronger than the bare bones they gave you here. Do y'all understand what we're doing? I'm going to put 7 minutes on the clock. 7 minutes, and then you guys are going to discuss evidence together. And then I'm going to try to teach you possibly a rebuttal by the end of the class period. If not, we'll get to rebuttals tomorrow. We good? All right, 7 minutes. Find your evidence. Oh, okay, so you're just giving your reasoning in your own words. Evidence, I want 2 pieces of evidence to prove your reasoning. Okay. Remember, you can go back to Lesson 4 because there's a lot on Lesson 4. And you guys already highlighted on Lesson 4. Yellow is physical, and red was mental. We already highlighted that before. He was acting childlike. Go to subunit Lesson 4, and they talk about him being childlike. Find the textual evidence. Remember, red. It's in red. Find the textual evidence we've already highlighted. Good. Don't forget to give your opinion of why. We're not using I think though, because do we ever use that in my writing? No. Because Mrs. Borbett doesn't care about your opinion. Not in your writing, at least.